leave our country borders open, it will interfere with our ability to keep a good hold of what the real risk is. And this is why we keep on emphasizing, as the UPND, but not just the UPND, our friends in the UPND have called for for the same measure to be implemented. Our colleagues in the NDC have called on the government to implement the same measure. So you can see that there is unanimous consensus across the political spheres around the need for us to lock down our borders. But again, we need to emphasize that in order for us to go through with this, it's important that our friends in the PF open up a cross-party platform of engagement so that we can begin to think through these initiatives, together as one people. But the other thing that we think needs to happen is that we need to restrict intercity domestic travels unless it is absolutely necessary. Again, that would be important in ensuring that we maintain the required kind of social distances. We know how crowded our public transportation system generally is, and we think that could be a breeding ground for unnecessary transmission of the coronavirus, and we think that we need to take necessary measures around that. We have also been very clear and categorical around the need to limit all public gatherings to no more than 5 people. Again, that should be that issue needs to be re-evaluated on an ongoing basis, because the risk will evolve and it will change. Sometimes there will be a need to just say, look, everybody stay at home. But for now, we think that it would be sufficient to restrict all public gatherings to no more than 5 people. But President HH was also categorical in stating that it's important that the government proceeds to removing all import duty and VAT on essential supplies, medical supplies, hand sanitizers, to make it easier for them to come into the country, but also for people to be able to buy them at the point of sale. We think that is crucial. But look, we think that on the business front, we haven't quite done as much in the way of thinking around what we can or should do in order to help and nurse the business environment through this difficult stint, because there will be consequences for business. And we think that if we are able to build consensus, there are things that we can consider. Like I just mentioned, the issue of loans and mortgages. These are issues that affect not just individuals, but also small-scale businesses. And we think that if we can give them a bit of latitude, commensurate to the period of the lockdown, and until the government is sufficiently certain that we have weathered the storm, we think that could go a huge amount of a distance. The other alternatives that we think can be and should be available to be explored is the issue of postponing by government of all tax payments and all mandatory regulatory sort of payments that are due, maybe to the ZRA and NAPSA, for small to medium-sized businesses. We think that will give them a bit of a breathing space for them to be able to weather the storm. But again, these measures would have consequences for everyone. And this is why, again, we keep on emphasizing it is important that everyone who needs to be gotten together onto one table and platform of engagement very, very quickly, let us engage. Even if it means on a virtual basis, let us engage and ensure that we build consensus around some of these things. But look, I think it's important for us to mention the need for us to quickly mobilize resources will be key, because at the moment Zambia does not have the required kind of resources, nowhere near, to be able to scale this kind of crisis as it evolves. And this is why we have stated, President HH was very categorical yesterday when he said, look, it is important that Parliament is reconvened. It is reconvened. If they have to meet remotely, let them meet remotely. But Parliament must be in session for purposes of approving all emergency financing requirements that the country would and might require for purposes of responding to this. The IMF have already provided the strongest indication yet that there would be some emergency financial assistance to be made to low to medium income countries countries like Zambia to help us respond to this crisis. And if we're going to tap into that offer for financial assistance, it is important that we get the right kind of parliamentary approval for that kind of assistance. We think that it's important, and we have to make sure that the money goes to the right kind of areas of need insofar as responding to this issue is concerned. So we think that those measures, if they are to be implemented in a manner that galvanizes consensus and ensures that everyone is carried along, they would go a fair amount of a distance in ensuring that the country is not only ready but also substantively and sensibly responds to this crisis as it rapidly evolves. The most important thing is that let's build consensus across all political lines. Let us continue to engage constructively and productively and avoid playing the blame game. The UPND has already stated we will not blame anyone. What we are calling for is that we all agree on what must happen, what measures should be taken. The PF, the UPND, the MMD, the NDC, everyone get on board and ensure that we support one another and ensure that we devise the right kind of response mechanisms to the problem.
All right.